Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you for joining our webinar, How RegTech is Shaking Up the Legal Services, presented in partnership between the Legal 500 and Complize, a compliance startup and partner of the Melbourne-based immigration law firm Hammond Taylor. My name is Alan Cohen. I'm a research editor at the Legal 500. And before I hand over the webinar to our impressive panel, I will give a brief introduction of today's topics. As the title suggests, we will be discussing RegTech and how over the past decade, it has accentuated its influence over regulatory, legal, and the broad business landscapes. So much, in fact, that understanding RegTech, the products that are available, their impact, the benefits on companies has become a key issue to in-house legal teams worldwide. And so today, our panelists will discuss fundamental questions related to the RegTech ecosystem, with the main objective of keeping lawyers up to date with the trends they need to be aware of in 2022. But first, let me introduce Rebecca Spohr, who will moderate and lead us through the discussion. Beck, do you want to say a quick hello so everyone sees who you are?
Yes, hello.
So Beck is a sales and partnership manager at Hammond Taylor with vast experience and a proven track record of delivering a full range of immigration and visa solutions to the corporate market. She's also a skilled relationship manager. In fact, she's the link between a diverse range of stakeholders and is expected to anticipate any potential issues that might arise for Complize's and Hammond Taylor's clients. I'll hand over to you in a moment, Beck, but before that, I would like to let our audience know that this session is interactive. So if you have any questions at any point during the webinar, please submit them using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll put them to the panel once the conversation is over. Okay, then, Beck, I'm handing this over to you. Feel free to introduce the topic further, as well as the panelists who are joining us today, and really lead the conversation, get us on the way.
Thank you so much, Alan. Welcome, everyone. Our online seminar is being held on the lands of the Burrawong, Yotta Yotta, and Warrandingi people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. And a big warm welcome to all of you. I'm Rebecca Spohr, Sales and Partnership Manager for Hammond Taylor, if we have not met before. Before I get started, if I could get everyone to turn off their cameras and remain on mute, we'll reserve the bandwidth for this online seminar. A bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded. If you have any questions for our speakers, please send them to the chat box and they'll be answered during our Q&A at the end of the seminar. As a nation of RegTech leaders, my greatest pleasure is to introduce the Legal 500 and attendees to our outstanding panel. Thank you to the Honourable Minister for Communications and Digital, Victor Dominello, for joining us today. His work within the digital space has made him a real champion for RegTech. Thank you to Complize, Brand Hub and Legal 500 for partnering with us today and helping educate the legal sector on the benefits of RegTech within the legal services. Thank you to our international guests, Tim Phillips and Mark Gilman, for being part of this wonderful panel. RegTech is innovative technology from AI to blockchain that can help us deliver not only legal services better and more effectively, but also tackle regulatory and compliance burdens more efficiently and more effectively. Australia is the third largest RegTech hub in the world, driven by strong compliance and regulatory culture and world-leading innovation. It is now my greatest pleasure to introduce the Honourable Minister, Victor Dominello. He's a Senior Minister for the New South Wales Government and has held various portfolios over the last decade, including Aboriginal Affairs, Finance and Innovation. In 2019, he was appointed as the Inaugural Minister for Customer Service, and in 2021 was also appointed the state's first Minister for Digital. The Minister passionately believes in the power of technology. Thank you, Minister.
Thanks, Rebecca. Can I also begin by acknowledging country and pay my respects to elders, both past and present. What I'll do today is I'll show you a video in a moment that shows the customer perspective of what we're trying to achieve here in New South Wales. And then at the end, of the address, I'll show you what the business or the regulatory facing side of that tech looks like, so that both the customer and the business are joined together through tech to make lives much simpler. So over to you, Beck, if you can play the first video.
No problem.
Imagine a future where you have the option to carry your identity and important credentials securely on a mobile device. Your day-to-day can be easier, faster, and more secure. We have the digital driver license, but that's just the beginning. In the future, you'll be able to opt in to carry your licenses, passes, permits, and cards digitally on your phone with the confidence that your private information stays private. The options could be endless, including sharing your information securely with a third party such as a gym. It's no sweat. The technology could extend to a student card or first aid certificate and more in a digital wallet. Security on location goes digital. Arriving at an interview, Gemma agrees to digitally prove her identity to get into the building. The job interview is a hit. A business can rely less on paper credentials, which are typically not secure. The employer verifies Gemma's university and TAFE qualifications. Gemma also shows her working with children check. The employer can have confidence in the qualifications, and Gemma consents to what is shared and who it's shared with. This future vision is one built on security and privacy. Credentials in your digital wallet will be saved locally on your phone, not collected centrally by government. A notification arrives and Gemma learns her working with children check is about to expire. She can renew it on the go. Her car registration is also due. She can renew it and get a record of her insurance with a few taps. Safe and secure. And all in the one place. No lost cards. Tomorrow, we'll make it easier for everyone to check credentials. Gemma's electrician turns up. She can verify Mike's license and have peace of mind he is who he says he is. The New South Wales Government vision is creating a secure and trusted digital environment that makes everyday life easier.
Thanks, Rebecca. So that's the vision. And when you see that video, many of you will be thinking, wow, that is just so far-fetched. But I can tell you now that it is well and truly on the way. So for example, the driver's license does exist. We are in the process of digitising the birth certificate and the first aid certificate. We are literally building out an education wallet that has credentials. So what you see in that video is literally going to happen. But we've got to make sure that with all things digital, we have to make sure that there is privacy, security, transparency, ethics, and inclusion. Because if you don't have those elements, you don't have trust. And if you don't have trust, you won't have adoption. And then it's definitely one step forward, 20 steps back. And we all know, because I get to see a bit of what's happening in the cyber world as well, the heightened posture right around the world when it comes to cyber. And right at the moment is particularly challenging circumstances. I can't see that lapsing anytime soon. So for that reason, if we want to truly move into that digital world, and I think the customers out there are so used to it, i.e. you can order food via a phone to your door within 10, 15 minutes and track along the way. You can get from point A to point B via your phone, track along the way. People are used to digital service delivery. If government does not provide digital service delivery that is commensurate to what they expect in the real world or see in the real world, that creates a trust deficit as well. So that's why we have to absolutely proceed forward, but again, in trusted settings. Now, let me take you to RegTech and speak just briefly about the two areas I think are going to be most significantly disrupted in the next 10 to 20 years, and that is medicine and the law. You know, two of the oldest professions. And why do I think they are going to be significantly disrupted? Well, just look at medicine. It is riddled with paperwork, paper processes. You still go to medical practices and they are still using fax machines. It really is extraordinary. Yet, it is an unbelievable dichotomy, because they are also at the cutting edge of technology, whether it's CRISPR, whether it's biotech. It is extraordinary what's happening on that end. So there's going to be significant disruption taking place there, particularly when it comes to personalised health. People aren't going to be part of a grouping. It will be personalised medicine. That requires a lot of information so that we can tailor particular medicine to you. The second area is the oldest profession, is the law. And I used to be a lawyer. I know how much paperwork is involved. And what's in paper, what's in an affidavit? Data. At the end of the day, it could be a sentence, but the sentence is data. And every time you see large paper processes, such as in the law, they will be heavily hit in terms of regulation disruption. But equally, when you start applying AI to crunching the data, more and more data, well, then I think we're going to have a big impact. And I was just speaking to the Chief Judge, the newly appointed Chief Judge in New South Wales about this, and we both agree that this is an area that we have to stay on top of. Now, what are we doing more broadly around RegTech in New South Wales that is world leading? And I'll stop on this and then maybe throw to the second video and then questions if you wish. Traditionally, what governments do is we put governments front and centre. We are the sun in the solar system, and we expect people, businesses, organisations to evolve and revolve around us. That's the wrong way. When you think about public service, we are there to serve the public. So we have to truly flip that paradigm and put people and organisations at the structure, at the centre of the universe, so that government service delivery evolves and revolves around them. That's what modern government should look like. But what happens is the way governments are traditionally structured, and this is not a political comment because it's above politics, governments are structured in silos. Education does its thing, transport does its thing, police does its thing, and they rarely talk. What we saw out of the pandemic, though, particularly in New South Wales, because I can speak to that because I was in the crisis cabinet, is an extraordinary level of collaboration that I've never seen before. So at the moment, you might have if you've got a business, you might have fair trading knocking on your door on a Monday. You might have safe work knocking on your door on a Tuesday. You might have the local council on your door on a Wednesday, the Food Authority on a Thursday, the Environmental Protection Authority on a Friday, and there's absolutely no rest because there's about 40 or 50 other regulatory agencies knocking on your door. What we tried to do in New South Wales, but we did not succeed at about 5 years ago, was to create a commerce regulator. And we thought that, in that world, we would have general inspectors out there doing all the inspectors' work. So we'd have an inspector general type concept coming back into the central agencies. But we realised that didn't work because it's like saying we will ask an ambulance officer to attend a fire and put out the fire. They're both emergency services, first responders, but they have specific roles. So rather than amalgamate and crunch all the agencies, what we are doing is turning it on its head. So we're creating an e-regulator platform. And that means every agency, whether it's fair trading, safe work, food authority, whatever, liquor and gaming, they can all have their deep silos of expertise, but they have to report through an e-regulator platform. That means they're all talking the same language, and they can make sure that if they are going on a Tuesday, they can make sure that if they need some information to provide to fair trading on Wednesday, they can provide that to keep the disruption to business at a bare minimum. But it also means that once you've got that e-regulator platform, then businesses tap in or interface with the government up there. So they have one interface. And that is truly putting businesses at the heart of service delivery, particularly from a government perspective. Why is that so important? I'll give you this example. If we're trying to deliver rules as code, whether it's in the legal profession or medical or in the electrical, whatever, I will need to go agency to agency and beg and borrow and whatever's required to please adopt rules as code. But if they're all on the same platform, they're all speaking the same language on the e-regulator, then it is one switch, and then the rules flow right across the ecosystem. Why is this so important, RegTech? Because we've seen in the pandemic, governments all around the world borrow money. And we know that this is, we need to rein that in. But the only way we're going to rein that in is through reform. So we either increase taxes or we reform. And RegTech, in terms of microeconomic reform, productivity gains, is low-hanging fruit. Absolutely. And that's why in New South Wales, we're particularly driven to make sure we get this right. A, it's a much better user experience for businesses and customers alike, but B, it's also deep microeconomic reform for the good of the state and the nation. So on that note, Beck, if you want to play the second video and then go from there.
The future is where government makes it easier for business owners like Mike, who runs an electrical contracting business. A day before a big job, Mike logs into his Service New South Wales My Business profile, which hosts records of his contractors. He checks the information is up to date. Liam's on site tomorrow and his compliance obligations are good. Business is mobile and ever-changing, and owners expect more access to government information on the go during their busy day. Regulation should be smart, helping businesses big and small. Mike uses the My Business profile to share required safe work compliance documents. It's easy to do. Mike's contractors can show their construction white cards. Imagine all licenses being digital, easy to display, share and verify. The New South Wales Government has a vision for digital regulation to make it even easier for businesses. Less manual paperwork means more focus on the people who make a difference to your business. Mike gets a safety alert about a building product recall while on site. He can work quickly with Liam to determine whether it's a risk for the client. Photos could be saved to his My Business profile, but also made instantly available to regulators. The offering to business should always be ease of access to information that's relevant and industry specific. At the end of the day, Mike will save time. Working through a to-do list in the My Business profile means not having to engage with a raft of individual regulators. It simplifies government for business, allowing business owners like Mike to focus on the important things.
So thank you, Minister. Did you have anything else that you'd like to add, or?
Just equally that, already in that video, we've delivered on the business profile for the businesses. The white card is now being rolled out. So again, this is not pie in the sky. We're actually rolling this out as we speak.
Really exciting times, Minister, and thank you again for joining us today. Really, you were wonderful. We were extremely lucky to be joined by Tim Phillips. Tim is a business innovator and builder who has worked at the highest levels of the global Deloitte organisation over the past 2 decades. He's led, influenced and delivered on transformation agenda in financial crime and analytics for Deloitte and its clients. Tim is a regular commentator in the global media on issues relating to financial crime, cryptocurrency and regulatory technology trends. He's passionate about social impact of the fight against financial crime, especially the impact of human trafficking and wildlife trafficking. He's also active in supporting financial inclusion as a strategy to fight financial crime, leading to his appointment of the board of directors and as a senior financial advisor to the blockchain technology company Identity. He's a member of the RegTech Association and now heads Regvisory. Over to you, Tim.
Thanks, Beck. And Minister, really pleased to hear some of the things you were just talking about. I really like the way you finished there talking about productivity and efficiency, because that is the business case for RegTechs going forward. And I work now advising founders, buyers, and funders in how they adopt regulatory technologies. And without a doubt, the big drivers of those efficiencies and client experience outcomes. That's the change. So it's a up and coming business. It's a remarkable part of the environment now. No longer the poor cousins of fintechs, now actually starting to really take a place. And there's not a day goes by when I'm not talking to particularly funders from all over the globe who are saying, how do we find RegTechs? How do we shift our focus away from the consumer marketplace, the fintechs, into those productivity processes, the automations, the disruption that's occurring in that space. So, it really is a remarkable environment we're going through. I was talking to a colleague of mine today who's based in Washington, DC, and early hours this morning, and he was just telling me about the mad rush that's occurring in the US at the moment with the big professional services firms, accountants, lawyers, and others who have suddenly realized that because of the tightening of sanctions restrictions, they've got to go back now and look at their entire global database of customers and so on. So they're starting to think about who are the individuals behind those customers, who are the entities, who are the other corporate entities behind them, who are the ultimate beneficial owners of all of those entities, because they need to be sanctions compliant. And I heard him say all of that, and he was basically writing the job description or the requirements description for regulatory technology. You simply can't do that now without technologies that are embedded in the process of financial institutions, big organizations, and so on. And that's really where it's all heading. It's still a pretty tough commercial road for RegTechs, and that's the reality. If you look at all of the big announcements that come through with startups and funders and so on, in the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being raised, they tend to predominantly still be fintechs, and the road is a lot harder to plow. I was on at an event, a digital event, just a few days ago, and listening to one of the founders of a very big funding firm, basically saying you've either got to be awesome in your product with no clients, and that'll get an interest because that means that the funders will have a way to shape you and take you into the client world, or alternatively, you've got to have a good product with awesome clients and get those processes started. So in the context of the legal world, there's a whole lot of opportunity, and it's not disruption at an enterprise level generally in RegTech space. Most of the buyers and products that are being developed are quite focused on specific opportunities, things they can do differently, processes they can automate, experiences with customers that are even better. And there are many capabilities like that. Now, I run an advisory business in the RegTech space, so I'm working with really early stage startups most of the time, and most of those people need great accounting advice, they need really good legal advice. And to be honest with you, when I look to advisors to bring in to help them, I tend to look at those who are digitized already, those who have a single subscription to get legal services or access to standardized legal documents, or accountants who will bring a partnership with not only tax and accounting advice, but also into tools like reporting engines, Xero, and other tools like that. So it's a real ecosystem. It's something that's changing quite substantially, and I do encourage you as advisors and providers and RegTech startups or users to think more about how you bring best of breed capabilities in to to build a solution, not just actually try and build an enterprise-wide capability. So look, I won't talk too much longer. I think the reality is it's a very exciting place to be. It is the next big thing in this area, but you've got to be structured. You have to be incredibly patient and resilient, because it does take a very long time to develop to the right place. And most of all, be part of the ecosystem. Join the RegTech Association, find people who have like minds doing similar things, and work really closely with them, because collectively is the way you'll do better in this environment. So I think that's enough from me. I'll hand back to you, Beck.
Thank you so much, Tim. It was so lovely to have you with us today. It's now my absolute pleasure to introduce our international guest speaker, Mark Gilman from Theta Lake. Mark Gilman is General Counsel and VP for Compliance at Theta Lake, where he advises on technology, privacy, and product strategy. Mark has 16 years of law, financial services, and IT experience as a litigator at Schiff Harden and in-house at Morgan Stanley. His practice includes a diverse set of technology-related regulatory issues, such as information management, cybersecurity, SEC, and FINRA regulations, GDPR and electronic communications compliance. Mark holds a BA Cumberland from the University of Pennsylvania and an LLB from London School of Economics and Political Science. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much. Just going to share quickly here. All right. So thanks again, Rebecca, for the opportunity to speak, and for the Legal 500 for the opportunity as well. I'm Mark Gilman, General Counsel and VP of Compliance here at Theta Lake. We're a security and compliance platform for modern collaboration communications. Really quickly, kind of want to take you through kind of what we do, and then give you a quick demo of the platform during this kind of brief 10-minute session, so they can give you some insight into what we do and how we do it. So as we've all kind of learned over the last 2 years or so, remote and hybrid work is really here to stay as the main operating model for businesses post-pandemic. And the backbone of that hybrid work is really around the collaboration and chat applications that facilitate communications among businesses, customers, regulators, government, to provide that connective tissue. So platforms like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Slack, etc. And the use of these platforms has introduced new and novel risks as a result, whether that's regulatory risks in the kind of financial services or healthcare or other domains, operational risks, and even reputational risks around the use of these platforms. And that's really where Theta Lake kind of is key. We help organizations to mitigate the risks around the use of these collaboration platforms, so that compliance, cybersecurity, and privacy operations can be more efficient and effective. So I'll quickly give you a kind of overview of what we do, and then we'll look at the platform very quickly to kind of try and tie everything together. So at Theta Lake, we use authorized APIs to ingest content from all the platforms that I was discussing, and all the logos that you saw on the first slide there. So we ingest the video, chat, webcams, whiteboards, file transfers from Zoom, Teams, etc. And then we use AI and machine learning to analyze it to figure out if there are any privacy, regulatory, or security risks inside of those conversations. We then surface those risks in a unified review screen, and ultimately can store the content on our platform or send it back to the organization's existing archive of records, so that they can kind of conduct all of their normal processes on the back of that, whether that's e-discovery or routine supervision, etc. I'll pause the screen share here quickly then to jump into the demo itself, which I realize can sometimes be a risky thing in a live situation like this, but hopefully technology will cooperate. Okay, great. So everyone should be seeing now the Theta Lake platform itself. And this policy setting screen just gives a good overview of what I was talking about, the kind of life cycle of content as it makes its way through our system. So starting on the kind of top left here, these are all the collaboration video content management platforms that we have direct partnerships with and ingest the audio, video, chat, etc. from. So you can see it's a pretty deep bench of integrations here, and we're constantly adding to that list of integrations. After we've ingested the content, we then analyze it, and we've got about 60 or 70 pre-built AI detections to find those risks inside of content, whether that's background risks like unclear audio or the presence of Australian tax file numbers shared in an Excel sheet or held up to the webcam, straight through to security issues like malware URLs or bullying and abusive language or profanity. And then finally, several financial services related detections for things like derivatives, promissory statements, complaints, and even discussions of cryptocurrency and the like. So after the content gets analyzed using those policies, we can then route it for review. We have a bunch of smart workflows to kind of get the right content to the right people. And then, storage aspect, we can house the content on our platform, or as I said, send it back to your existing archives for long-term storage. And so to tie it together a bit and give you a sense of what the platform looks like in action, once we've ingested this rich content from Zoom and other platforms, it comes to this review screen where organizations, compliance, and risk teams can interact with it and determine whether there are risks in the content. So here's an example, a demo content of a Zoom meeting. On the left-hand side here, you can see this is the entirety of the meeting itself. And then on the right-hand side here, this is our compliance advisor. This is really the bot that tells the reviewer, this is where those AI detections have hit. These are the portions of the conversation that you actually need to look at to figure out if someone has said something wrong or done something improper. And so what also threads this together are these red dots on the bottom of the screen here, which are kind of aligned to these various detections that the compliance advisor sees. So for example, if I click through to the 1 minute 28 or 29 second mark here, what you will see is the fact that we've detected several things, the compliance advisor, including US social security numbers, URLs, office and document apps. And sure enough, if you look on the left-hand side here, you'll see a Google sheet with a bunch of social security numbers. You'll see various URLs here for the applications that are being shared. And then you'll see a PowerPoint kind of front and center. And that indicates kind of the presence of an Office document. So this is super powerful, again, for those kind of webcam, whiteboard, screen sharing issues and modalities that exist in these collaboration tools that are effectively really hard to detect if you don't have a tool like Data Lakes. Next, I'm going to move into our search screen really quickly and just show you a couple more examples of content and what it looks like in our platform. So first, I'm doing a quick search for WFH or work from home. I'm going to dial up a Microsoft Teams conversation here. And again, what's unique about Data Lake and our ability to ingest content using APIs is we can make the content look effectively the same as it does on the existing platform within Data Lake. So this is a Teams conversation. As you can see here, we're capturing all of the kind of fun, animated GIFs and emojis. The compliance advisor is working on the right-hand side here and detecting any issues that come up. You can see, other URLs and images as well. The other really cool thing about our platform is that you can see this conversation in the broader context as well. So if I flip over here, because a lot of these chat platforms, the conversations take place over days or weeks or even months, we can see that this conversation in particular started in March. And if I want to, I can actually scroll ahead to September, where the conversation has restarted. And again, you can see all of the kind of rich detail that we capture, including where a chat conversation has been edited and changed to give you the full context there. And you can imagine that, again, if you're kind of in the healthcare space or financial services or other regulated industry, understanding what your employees are saying and how they're saying it is really important, given the kind of increasing cybersecurity and privacy issues around, data leakage and data exposure, or things like, providing financial advice and ensuring that those kind of recommendations and the guidance there is kind of up to scratch. Last thing I will do a quick search on here, again, to show you some of the visual kind of aspects of the platform and really what distinguishes us. I'm doing a quick search for the word beyond. A bunch of content's coming up here, but if I scroll again to an example of a Microsoft Teams meeting, you'll see, as you would expect here, the red indicator here that the compliance advisors found a couple of things, but these purple dots at the bottom are actually displaying where we've hit on the particular search word. So if I scroll here, you're going to see the word beyond meat. We're doing a OCR of all the kind of visual content that gets displayed over the webcam or the whiteboard, et cetera. And so we're able to pick up the fact that someone's discussed beyond meat here, even though it's not in the audio, it's not in the chat, it's not anywhere else. So again, our ability to pick up on the content that you might otherwise miss is really key to the process and helps us and helps organizations to understand their data better and understand it in context. Going to flip back to the slides just really quickly. So deploying Theta Lake, we're cloud-based. We run on AWS and Azure. We have local data centers in Australia and can get clients up and running super quickly, even over the course of a weekend. We take security and compliance really seriously. We're SOC 2 Type 2 certified and also mapped to ISO 27001. We've got a bunch of case studies that I can share through this deck, through the link in this deck after the call today. And then finally, just wanted to kind of leave folks with what the industry and some of our customers are saying about us. So first, we were really excited this year to be named an honorable mention for Gartner's Enterprise Information Archiving Magic Quadrant. We were the only early stage company that was included in the honorable mention. So that was just a great kind of recognition for us. We also got a bunch of 5-star reviews in the Gartner Peer Insights. And then along the right-hand side here, you can see what some of our other customers are saying about us, like Wells and TD and Advisor Group. So thanks again for the opportunity to present. Realized it was a bit of a whirlwind, but hopefully gave you some good insights.
Beck, just to let you know you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Mark. So interesting to hear. And Theta Lakes is definitely trailblazing the way for RegTech. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jackson Taylor, CEO and co-founder of Complize. Jackson is also managing partner at Hammond Taylor, a boutique Australian immigration law firm. Best Lawyers have recognised Jackson as one of the leading immigration lawyers in Australia. As an immigration lawyer, he has been planning solutions to improve immigration systems for several years. These are now coming to life in the Complize platform. He's given keynote speeches and presentations at conferences such as Migration Institute of Australia National Conference, American Immigration Lawyers Association European Conference, Australia Labour Law Association Biennial Conference, and Association of Corporate Counsel National Conference on Immigration Law and Compliance. This is on top of his media commentary work, which has seen Jackson appear on BBC World News, AFR, SMH, The Age, and ABC. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you very much, Beck, for the kind introduction. You actually managed to make me blush, which is, I must say, quite an achievement because I'm quite shameless. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Really excited to talk to people about how and why the RegTech space is really increasingly relevant to immigration across jurisdictions at this point in time. Immigration is something of a laggard. I note the minister's comments in regards to the transformation that's occurring across the legal landscape, and immigration is no exception. Immigration, I remember about 15 years ago when I was a young backpacker going to Italy and getting a visa and needing to sort of stand in a queue at 5 a.m. in the morning to wait for the local police station to open. And I went into the police station, I showed them my visa and my passport. which was a paper stamp in there, and I had to sign my name in a book to say that I was living in the local area for an extended period. And immigration in many ways, in many jurisdictions, has not changed that much since that time. It remains a paper-based process in many countries. And in that respect, Australia is very much a leader. We have a digital online immigration platform. The government knows who is in the country, who is outside the country, who has a visa at any given time. And that has created a lot of opportunities for me and for the broader sector in this area, because what we're starting to see is that immigration is not going to escape the transformations that are changing the legal sector. And in fact, immigration is very much subject to regulatory technology or RegTech from the regulator already. And it's something that the legal services sector, whether it's people who are providing immigration services or whether it's organisations who are using temporary visa holder labour in Australia, for example, need to get up to speed with. So why does RegTech matter in immigration? Well, as I've just outlined, in 2019, there were 179,000 permanent visa decisions in Australia, and there were 8.8 million temporary visa decisions. Now, that number overall increased 42% over the course of 9 years. Of course, since the global pandemic, things have come down quite significantly. But interestingly, out of that 8.8, if we look at another subset, which is decisions which are subject to potential potential technology involvement, if I can put it that way, there were 70% of 7.1 million visa grants in Australia were done by a computer. That is to say, primarily short-term visas like visitor visas, but increasingly student visas, graduate visas, even some aspects of the temporary work program. Those decisions are being made by the department's computer systems using algorithms and other decision-making systems that the government has implemented. So regulatory technology is already here from a government perspective, and it's time for employers and legal service providers to catch up to that reality. So in Australian workplaces and for Australian employers, prior to the pandemic, and again, that's a bit of a caveat because there has been a reduction since that time, but prior to the pandemic, there were 1.7 million people in Australia on a temporary visa. That number equated to close to one in 12 people in the workforce. And for every temporary visa holder in Australia, there is a raft of legal obligations for any employer who seeks to employ those people. They may be the obligation to check their visa status prior to employing them, or to continue to check their visa status during the employment period. You may have obligations if you are sponsoring that visa holder to notify the government about certain changes or to keep records. You also have obligations as an employer, if you are sponsoring people, to ensure that your staff are trained to know that they are not allowed to do certain illegal conduct. So this bottom line item here on the screen, CFMO, or charging for a migration outcome, is a element or a division in the legislation which makes it illegal to ask for or receive a benefit in exchange for sponsorship. So if you're running a business and you have, let's say, a chain of supermarkets, and someone who is a manager at one of those supermarkets says to someone, look, yes, we'll sponsor you for a visa, but you have to give me $10,000, okay, or even a whole lot of scenarios that are much less significant than that, then they have potentially breached those laws by asking for a benefit in exchange for an immigration event, okay? And as an employer, if you haven't trained staff that is in fact illegal, then you have liability for that employee's conduct. So what I'm saying is there are all sorts of ways that the existing demographics in Australia make immigration an issue for employers. And the question is then, how do you manage that? And so what we did in developing this product is we looked at the the compliance landscape in immigration. And what we saw was the really significant potential risks for employers. So ongoing brand damage. Without mentioning any names, I think everyone in Australia would be well aware that there are a number of organisations that have been significantly damaged by non-compliance with visa laws and through the exploitation of temporary visa holders. So brand damage is real, it's ongoing, and it's significant. There are civil and criminal penalties for employers. If you're an organisation who's engaged in corporate social responsibility, promoting your organisation as someone who is doing the right thing, non-compliance in this area is really going to knock the wind out of those efforts. And then there are other things, access to global talent. If you lose the right to sponsorship, then you can't bring people in from the parent company overseas. You can't access skilled staff from overseas. And that makes it a challenge to meet your operational requirements. So in this context, what we looked at and saw was that there really was a series of challenges across the operating environment that were very significant for organizations, particularly as you scale. And what that meant was you need to have systems and processes in place. But through my experience and that of my colleagues in the immigration law sector, what we realized was that almost everyone, without exception, was at best managing these processes through Excel. Maybe in some cases, there were some modifications to a HR system at best. But the reality is that it's a complex external legal environment with frequent changes. Very few organizations have the scale in Australia to employ in-house experts. And the obligations that arise from these immigration, from employing temporary visa holders and interacting with the immigration system have touch points with multiple regulators, okay? That's a challenging environment to operate in. Internally, there's a whole bunch of other challenges. There is the regulatory burden of trying to manage your obligations through manual systems like Excel. There's the silo effect, which both limits the knowledge that stakeholders may have in one area of the business around what they're supposed to do and sharing that with other areas of the business. There's also something of a silo effect in terms of key areas of the business, whether it's global mobility, human resources, knowing and understanding these risks, but that message not getting through to the legal sector or the legal team or to the executive team or to finance to fund a solution. And then, of course, in the absence of a customized solution in the market, your only option is to build. And so we looked at that environment and we decided that what was necessary was to develop a solution for employers to meet their immigration obligations through automated technology, automated techniques, which is essentially a regulatory technology solution. There's an ancient internet proverb, which I made up shortly before this presentation. Today's conduct brings 7 years of liability, okay? So one of the challenges for many organizations is that immigration is not recognized in Australia as a really significant concern. This is different from the context in a jurisdiction like the United States, where the major penalties that have been handed out, the most significant penalty was $700 million. And in a number of European jurisdictions, even a minor infraction can lead to a penalty of €500,000 or thereabouts. In Australia, there has not been a significant amount of activity by the regulators, but that doesn't mean that it will stay that way forever. And so what we've done is we've built this platform to cover the entire process using our knowledge as immigration lawyers to cover from employee onboarding through the entire employee lifecycle to offboarding. We've built a single dashboard where people can track, very much like a HR system for visa holders. You can track and manage your immigration obligations to employees. You manage those notifications to the different regulators as required. And you can provide that training to employees across the board to ensure that if there is misconduct, then the organization has a real defense on the basis that the employees have actually completed the relevant training and should be aware that they are not allowed to do, conduct that is unlawful. So what we've done is we've built out three key modules: workforce management, online training, and knowledge libraries to educate stakeholders and provide the necessary resources. Here's an example of what the workforce module looks like. This is what I've characterized as a HR platform for visa holders. It allows stakeholders such as HR to go in and make changes, to notify government of changes to duties, to keep records for immigration record keeping purposes. And the whole purpose here is to streamline the process. It's to reduce the burden on often relatively unskilled administrative staff who are asked to manage a complex and frequently changing legal compliance environment. We've created training modules which address stakeholders, line managers, visa holders, and ensure that they understand their obligations through short compliance courses and videos that are completed just in the same manner that a compliance course might be completed for other regulatory purposes. We've provided resources so that stakeholders have access to relevant and update materials, because the information you can find on the Department of Home Affairs website isn't accurate. So all of these tools are designed to create a regulatory solution, a technology solution that fits that gap in the immigration space. Because even though the regulator isn't wielding the stick today, that doesn't mean that there isn't a policy change down the road. That doesn't mean that, you know, non-compliance now will leave your business in the position it should be in the years to come. So thank you very much, Beck, for the opportunity to present. It's a real pleasure, and handing back over to you.
No, thank you so much, Jackson. Wonderful to hear all the wonderful things that Complize is doing in the regulatory space. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce Adrian Candeiras. Adrian co-founded Bombora Technology Group of companies, formerly Oz Registry Group, in 1999, and grew the business from a small Melbourne startup to a thriving global organisation. Under his leadership as Chief Executive Officer, the group created a powerful reputation as specialists in the development of high-volume, complex, transactional-based internet systems. His relentless pursuit of success helped him gain the company an enviable position within the industry. A result of this success was the acquisition of Bombora Technologies in July 2015 by US technology company Newstar. Adrian has given keynote speeches and presentations at business conferences such as iStrategy, the CIO Summit, AdTech, Domain Fest, IPTA, iMedia, and the Internet Show. This is on top of his media commentary work, which has seen Adrian appear on Bloomberg Television, Sky News UK and Australia, Channel News Asia, and Network 10. I now hand over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. I will share screen. First of all, it clearly sounds like it pays to have a good PR person writing that sort of guff for me, but thank you very much for the intro, Beck. I'll get right into it. I see that we're pushing towards the first hour, and thanks everybody for sticking by. Today I'm going to discuss omnichannel overload, monitoring marks in an ever-evolving landscape, and use Brand Hub as an example of how we're doing so. Beck's already given a little bit of an intro, but I do like to talk about myself, so let's circle back to that momentarily. I'm currently the CEO of Brand Hub. Importantly, I am not a lawyer, so you can save all your legal questions for those that are much more smarter and well educated than I. I am, however, a Pisces, in case anyone's listening that might be meaningful to, and consider myself somewhat of a technologist. I founded a little company back in 1999 called Oz Registry, which became Bombora Technologies, but the responsibility for that organisation was to run the .au domain name registry. That is, every single domain name that ended in .au, which ended up being well over 3 million by the time we finished up, was under my responsibility, which if you knew me any better, you would realise how ridiculous that was. But I managed to get through unscathed, so good times. Then saw probably the biggest change to the internet, at least the naming convention thereof, since the addition of Grumpy Cat memes, and that was the new GTLD program. So we're saying all this stuff because domain names are going to feature a little bit within this presentation as an example of how RegTech is solving some issues. I sold my listed firm back in NASDAQ. Some people told me I needed to include the money because apparently that's important. But what it did do is allow me to buy some stupid toys and do some stupid startups since. Brand Hub is not one of them. It's one of the better ones. So let's keep moving. It would be remiss of me, I guess, to not include some statistics to start off with. So let's focus on single channel and trademarks. It's somewhat of a minefield here. Those stats are, in 2019, there were more than 11.3 million trademark applications filed globally. That's 3 times as many at the start of the decade. And there were 42 million trademarks listed. And therefore, the opportunity for a brand to own its own patch of real estate is becoming more challenged. That is the problem when we look at just a single channel there. So if we wind the clocks back not all that far, we had really 2 things to worry about as trusted advisors, specifically, and potentially lawyers, I guess. And that was to look after business names and look after trademarks. They required a very small area of expertise by way of the registration and monitoring thereof. It was easily managed, and we could be reactive. And by reactive, I mean that we could see a problem, we could solve a problem. It's pointed out to us, given that there's so few channels to have to monitor, we're able to jump on that very, very quickly. However, the landscape has changed. So not only do we have the business names and trademarks as we did have, we have equally as important, given their importance to business, domain names, social media handles, and indeed even now, more recently, NFTs with respect to business. And a lot of the lawyers that are on this call will no doubt be navigating some of that. So now we have what I'm calling this omni-channel of brand maintenance. And it causes a whole bunch of inefficiency and headaches. And we can no longer be reactive. We need to be proactive, because there's no possible way we can manually have full visibility to support our clients here. So what we would call the typical brand life cycle would be to develop a brand, that is to be able to search and work out what we might want to call ourselves. We would then register that brand to secure it, monitor to make sure there's no infringement, and then look for or action and enforcement should there be potential infringement. So as I said, omni-channel to multi-channel. This is getting a lot harder for us to do just those four particular pieces or features of a brand life cycle. So as I said, domain names would feature. This one-trick pony is going to buck. So let me talk you through a little bit of domain name history, just to let you know how even domain names are a single channel and how there is a multi-channel within that particular discipline. So let's go back in time. The OGs were what we called the GTLDs, generic top-level domains, com.net.org. You'd all know these guys very, very well. Maybe not ARPA and a couple of the nerdy ones, but they were the forefathers, if you like, of our internet experience. Then if you're a nerd, you'd know what the ISO 316 list is. I certainly do. That details what country codes could be allocated, and every country was given its own namespace. So .au was for Australia, UK for United Kingdom, Western Samoa. Tuvalu is a small Pacific island nation. They were given .tv, and .co is Colombia. So that was all well and good. That represented, so if I was living in one of those locations or doing business and I wanted to associate myself with that geography, I would register one of those names. But then it got a little bit more complicated, because Tuvalu worked out that they could actually brand themselves as a namespace that pertained to the television industry. So they sold their souls, actually, but did very well out of it. In fact, the TV domain name is the biggest revenue earner for that island nation, and they depend a hell of a lot on their on the revenue they source from the sale of those names to a big boy in the industry called VeriSign. .cc, the Turk and Caicos Islands, had they branded themselves as clothing company, and .co for Colombia indeed rebranded themselves and took themselves on as a competitor for .com. So if you do see a .co name out there, and there are oftentimes some on billboards out to the airport, you're actually looking at a Colombian domain name, but they've tried to rebrand it in order to generate revenue. So that means it's complicated, because as you start to look at monitoring within these channels, you can start to see it gets harder and harder. Along came a bunch of what we called sponsored TLDs. We can skip over them. You probably haven't seen many of those around. By the way, .cat is for Catalonia, not for the animal. Then the big boy came along, the zeitgeist I referred to earlier, which was new GTLDs. And we saw the introduction of 1,400 new names, including .film, .xyz, .adult, .tattoo. A hell of a lot of rubbish, but some good ones in there too. And then finally, we've seen some names, once again, in the CC space that were repurposed. IO actually doesn't, it's for Indian Ocean. It doesn't mean anything, but it seems that the startup community has grabbed it and gone about it. AI does mean something as far as they say it means artificial intelligence. And you'll see some companies go and register themselves under this particular TLD to try and be quirky. So there you can see on a somewhat chronological way, the evolution of the namespace has created many more channels for us to have to monitor or indeed research in order to help secure brands and look after them. So let's take it through a very, very quick example. I've got a company called Widgets Proprietary Limited. It makes films. It's an Australian company, so I think I should go and register widgets.com.au. Interesting fact here for you folks. You can write this one down if you haven't been aware yet. .au is actually opening up for direct registration. So this year, on I think it's March 24th, I will be able to secure widgets.au, and you'll no longer need the second level comnet org that has been around since inception within .au. That's a fun fact for today. Anyway, let's keep going. If I'm going global with my business, I might want to register in .com, get my widgets, or if I was doing business in the Middle East, I might want to register in Arabic script. This is an actual domain name that works. It's read right to left. It does have a dot in between them. The first, what you see on the left-hand side is shabaka, which means web. And then the word on the right means widgets. So that actually means widgets.web and is a real domain name. Then there could be film related, because I'm in the film industry. I could get widgets.film. If I wanted to be one of those quirky guys, I could get the AI, XYZ, or indeed TV if that was where it goes. So once again, just having one particular company name, I've now got to think very deeply about where I'm going to do business, how I'm going to do business, just to handle its domain name registration and its online presence. So let's look at the monitoring and enforcement now. We've registered it. We're now registered as widgets.com.au. Now we want to monitor this mark, make sure it is infringed. But how do we do that? Do we continually do domain name searches each and every day for the exact match in other jurisdictions? Do we have to go and register names in other jurisdictions? Do we just do we look for similar words? And therefore, what other namespaces do we monitor? So that on its own, the monitoring of a namespace to ensure that we're not getting infringed can be quite complex and complicated, and indeed manual. And so then how do we action it? There's a lot of moving parts, and many of which, as I said, have to be performed manually. And then as businesses, as we look after our clients, there is a cost of what happens when we screw up. And that is we don't do a search in a particular day and someone registers something, or indeed there's a live infringement and we don't capture it. So there can be a cost of going back and trying to secure, and many of you would have done this before, is to try to secure a name after it's already been registered by somebody. It gets expensive very, very quickly. So thank goodness there's this thing called RegTech, or RegTech as we go RegTech, RegTech as we go in. So RegTech, the way I look at it is the use of technology to benefit a business like the legal industry, legal services industry. And it shouldn't just be about technology for technology's sake. It's got to do something. And there are one of the key components of RegTech should be technology for a better result. So what does that mean? I've tried to break it down and speak in generalities here. What I consider the 4 must-haves for RegTech when we're looking at implementing that or any of this technology into our business. First and foremostly, efficiency. We need to be able to work smarter and look at our expense side of our business. The smarter and more efficiently we can work, the cheaper we can operate. And that obviously helps the bottom line of our business. And automation certainly helps with that. And indeed, well, is probably key, especially with some of the things you've just seen with respect to domain names. So they can also generate opportunity. RegTech must generate opportunity. That is the ability to drive revenue. Through its technological implementation, we want to be able to see that so we can get some extra business through the door. We want to make it accurate. So it needs to help us with the way we conduct our business with respect to accuracy and reduce that capacity for errors that I talked about before, which can be very expensive. And then lastly, and oftentimes the forgotten piece, is the ease of integration. It's one thing to go out there and want the latest and greatest, but if it doesn't suit our business or work cohesively with our existing work streams, it can be more trouble than it's worth. So I guess four points that I see RegTech needs to adhere to in order for it to be helping the legal services industry. So lo and behold, I just happen to have an example here of a RegTech business that does exactly that. And I'll use that as an example to help us as we go through. So I represent an organisation called Brand Hub. Brand Hub is specifically for trusted advisors, lawyers, accountants, etc. Those that they perform these tasks on behalf of clients for. It allows a company to come to life, that is, be branded, be managed and be protected in one central location. So we do all of those things, of which we only sort of went down deep into with respect to domain names. And we'll go into some further examples in a minute, but in one simple location. It'll provide guidance and a pathway to unlock your client's potential. And that is the ability here for your client to do better business through having more streamlined experiences or connections with their customers. Brand Hub uses automated processes, back to one of our key tenets, if you like, to save you time so that you as lawyers can apply your craft. So rather than doing bookkeeping or indeed paperwork or endless Google searching, you're able to have these automated processes work in the background to allow you to do lawyering, which after all is what you got certified for. So Brand Hub is really broken down into 5 key areas, of which I've got some very quick slides to take you through and show you. The first of which is customer management, your ability to enter customers' details and get some very deep understanding of their attributes with respect to a profile or their company profile with trademarks that they may hold, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's brand development. Going back to that life cycle of a brand, that is the ability to have a deep search functionality across all different types of registries, including WIPO, ASIC, IP Australia, and over 300 domain namespaces. So this means when I'm doing a search on behalf of a client for a name that they want to call their business in advance of having actually registered it, we can know with some good certainty about where it's taken, where it's not, what namespaces is it taken in, and where is it available. So potentially sort of looking for those issues before they arise. Then there's obviously the capability to register those names or those trademarks within the construct of the platform. And that is to create companies, register domain names. Oh, and there must have been something else there. And trademarks, I believe they would have said. I don't know why that's gone missing. But importantly, it's all done through one sheet. You enter the information it's all replicated throughout the process in the system, such that we can once again minimize any chance for entering data. So it's one form that, depending on how you want to action it, carries through the relevant information. And then lastly, brand protection, and that is to monitor. And here we use a sophisticated artificial intelligence engine. And that is, it works away in the background, and we can tune the sensitivity. So we can either use exact match. So please keep looking at exact matches in other namespaces, going back to my domain name example, and let me know should someone register a name that is an exact match of mine. Or we can tune it and say, okay, it might have the word in it, or it might be a misspelling of the word, and so on. So we can tune that sensitivity. The reason that's important is because that enables us potentially for that revenue opportunity. And that is, we can be proactive then and go back to our customers and say, hey, did you know this is going on? And then, of course, should they want you to pursue it, there's an opportunity to make revenue there. So you're performing a service on behalf of your customers that you can obviously drive business through. And then lastly, there's the brand enforcement, which is the piece I just talked about. And we do actually keep a database of everybody that's on the system is kept as part of the database, such that if you have a particular skill set that you're missing, you could go through the people that are on the platform and access them to be able to get them to help out, step in. So it's sort of a community that we're generating within the platform itself. Very quickly, I've got 5 slides here to just quickly show you what it looks like. This is what you'll see as a tile where you generate for each particular customer you may have. You click on that tile and you get a bit of an in-depth data set here that shows, for example, the trademarks you can see there, any trading names they may have, where the registered business are. Once again, a lot of this we pre-populate. If you enter your ACN, we go through and pre-populate all this information. So this is not manually typed in. Now we have an example here. I might want to set up Adrian Candeiras Racing or AK Racing. I tell my trusted advisor to go ahead and see if they can get the name for me. Trusted advisor logs into the system, types it in. Now, AK Racing is not available as a company name, But there doesn't seem to be any trademarks that it infringes. And you can see there the domain name availability check that is performed, and that continually scrolls down through. And you can select certain namespaces you would want to have searched, or indeed leave it open for the whole gamut of 300. You can see here the example of Target, a brand we all know very well. Clearly, the company or brand name wouldn't be available, and you would expect that there may be trademarks that would be infringed by doing so. And you get visibility on what those trademarks are, so that you can drill down, pardon the pun on the first example there, you can drill down deeper into each one of them to find out what industry they're in and whether there may be some potential overlap and concern. And then as this extends down, you can see the domain name. As you would expect, the domain name availability is pretty tough with respect to Target. We're in the home stretch here, folks. This is what the customer would see logging on. I'll skip to the next one in the interest of time. This here, you'll see on the right-hand side where it says brand alert, and there are actions there. This is where the monitoring is taking place. And the monitoring is letting, once you've logged in through as a customer through the portal, you would be told that Next Money Limited has some actions that are need to be done regarding that brand, and you can go and investigate what they are, and then obviously take action where required. Alrighty, Beck, I'm literally at the finish line. I thought I would leave everybody with what I considered 5 top RegTech tips for the day. For what they're worth, I'll skim through them very, very quickly. First one is growing a business isn't just about increasing revenue. We've touched on this throughout this presentation today. It's all about playing smart. And that is oftentimes trying to get a result from your bottom line, not just through customer acquisition. Customer acquisition can be very, very expensive. So the smarter we can do what we're doing internally, the more efficient we act, hopefully the better result we can give to that bottom line. Next point is disruption is real and ever present. And by that, I mean, no industry is static, right? If you don't move forward, you die. I say this in most times I get to talk out when I get to speak to people as a technologist. It's that, it's in my experience of having dealt with lawyers for a number of years, for both good reasons and bad, I would say that the legal services industry has been slow to act. Which is why we heard the minister talk earlier about fax machines and so on and so forth. So we need to move forward, and as businesses, we need to embrace that change wherever we can. Now, this one might be somewhat controversial, but that is invest in technologists firstly, then technology. And by that, I mean, oftentimes we farm out the review of technology to the admin person in our office, or a lawyer that's got a few minutes to spare. And what I call their full-time brain over part-time brain, someone that is dedicated to embracing technology within an organization, to be able to do all the appropriate testing, look at the pros and cons of the implementation, help manage that implementation through, will oftentimes do a far better job of someone it is not their full-time task. So look at appointing a technologist within your organization. Then there's be bold, make decisions. Don't sit on your heels here. Going back to the second point there, but these integrations do take time, and they will be bad before they become good. They will be inefficiencies before they become more efficient. So stay the course, be bold, and continue to push the integration when you can. The reward will come. And of course, all of this, if RegTech is done right, it allows, especially all you legal folks out there, to focus on your qualifications rather than Google searches. You all spent a bloody long time at university, so you're able to free yourself up to go and do your lawyering, rather than spending time trying to work out how we can check for possible infringement. So, Rebecca, I will finish off there my top tips. I should say Brand Hub is in beta, and we're welcoming people to come along and play. If you'd like to have a look, I did say the quirky domain name. We've got one. Look at that, brandhub.ai for artificial intelligence. So please go ahead and visit that website, sign up to become part of the beta launch with your organisation. Pitch over, but hopefully able to deliver some value there. Thanks, Beck.
Thank you, Adrian, and really, really interesting, especially around domain names. So thank you to all of my panelists today. Really appreciate your time. We've got a little bit of time for Q&A now. I have noticed that some of the questions that have come through to the chat box have been answered. But is there anyone else online that would like to ask Jackson, Adrian, Mark, or Tim anything?
Beck, I don't know if you want to, would it be fortunate to read some of the questions for the sake of the audience? I don't know if that'd be interesting. So, maybe
Not a
panelists
problem.
have
I'll just jump into that now.
Yeah. So, if any of the panelists want to add something, they can.
Okay, let me just get this up, sorry. Okay, so thanks to Tim that answered one of the first questions that came through. Are there any surveys which show the public's expectations regarding RegTech simplified government in Australia, APAC? Thank you. Tim was fantastic. Tim's already sent a link through, which the RegTech Association has published a study and completed last year that addresses the RegTech environment. So please go jump on that link. We have another question that's come through. Many RegTech solutions look very interesting. What are the most popular ones amongst big, smaller firms? I imagine they have different needs. Thank you to Jackson Taylor who answered this. Actually, Jackson, did you want to just jump on and give an explanation over your answer?
Yeah, certainly. And I know that Tim was typing an answer as I was as well. So he may have something to add.
The same answer. Jackson.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's great. Yeah. So one thing that I would like to do is recommend that anyone who's interested in this space look at the RegTech Association. They are an Australian association. They're very well recognised internationally. They're plugged in internationally into the broader community. And they really are a great advocate for both firms who are looking to enter into this space as a RegTech service provider. And they also have great relationships with a number of regulators, which is really important to sort of bring those two communities together. So that's a really great space to look. Tim, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think I was just going to add that, these are very in-point solutions. And so you need to look at what your challenges are, look at what the opportunity is for automation and disruption, and focus on solutions that address that specific issue. So, they could be simple things like onboarding of clients to your legal firm, or they could be, tools like Mark has been talking about, or even, recording tools that convert recorded conversations into text, and all those sort of things that will help you in your efficiency and client service.
Fantastic. Thank you both. This is actually a really interesting question. Good morning. It's been very interesting discussion. Some of the products you have mentioned probably enter several ethical questions and some level of ethical compliance. Are there any conversations around ethical questions that are happening within RegTech companies themselves? Jackson, I might hand over to you to answer this one.
Yeah, just very, very briefly, because I'm sure some of the other panelists have some really valuable positions and opinions here. There are a huge number of issues related to the RegTech space and ethics and so forth. And I really highly recommend a text if you're interested in the administrative law or law relating to government, public law as it's sometimes known. There's a great Australian text that came out last year from Janina Bowie and Katie Miller called The Automated State, that looks at what are the implications of governments increasingly using technology. And we have those really significant examples in Australia of the robo-debt scandal that resulted in enormous harm to the public coming about because of inappropriate use of technology. So there's some really great discussions out there, and that's the first one that I would point to, but it is quite an in-depth academic text. Mark or Tim, I'm sure you have some great points here.
Yeah, I'd recommend reading around some of the ethics and AI kind of emerging regulations, whether that's in the EU or some of the conversations and recent decisions at the FTC, obviously a little bit of a US bias here, but that the FTC's had around algorithmic analysis and such. Yeah, there's tons of depth of reading there as well around things like bias and fairness, we actually submitted a response to the Fed and FDIC and a bunch of federal agencies here in the US did a call for kind of thoughts on the emergence of AI and AI regulation. And our response, as well as that from SIFMA and others, are pretty instructive there in terms of trying to think about a roadmap, particularly around kind of machine learning technologies and how we make them fair and consistent as they get deployed more heavily, especially in financial services.
Mark, I think the key point that I'd make here is not all RegTech is AI or machine learning driven, that a lot of it is process automation, really smart efficiency steps, a whole range of elements that might have simple analytic rules attached to them that aren't making judgments or doing the sorts of things that AI might do. The other point I'd make is that every founder I talk to says, I'm using AI, and when I look at what they're actually doing, it's rare they're actually using true artificial intelligence, which is where the ethical challenges arise. So it's horses for courses. You do need to look at the technologies that support, and many of them will just be process driven.
And can I just say, I think that from a government perspective and the role of governments using technology in this space, I think we need to distinguish between governments where government is using technology to gather information and inform itself versus situations where government is actually using automated decision making and is actually allowing an algorithm to lead to a legal outcome. And I think that's a really key distinction in this space. And one that we'll probably be exploring for the next decade or so, because the implications are only really just starting to arise. And I see a question there from Marina about the whole rules as code sort of concept, and what's the interplay between the state of the law and the way the law is written and prescribed and computer code. And that's a really huge discussion that I think is going to take off over the course of the next decade.
Thank you so much, guys. Just one last question, and I'll have you all chime in. How will lawyers, especially private practicing lawyers, be positioned in the e-regulation idea? Business owners have an easy access to bunch of regulations, but do they still need lawyers to advise them the legal implications, etc.? And if so, how will lawyers be fitted into the platform? So I might start with you first, Tim, if that's okay.
Sure. Look, my sense is we'll never do away with lawyers, which is probably good news to most of the people on the call. Nothing is ever that black and white. We'll always need guidance on interpretation of those elements. And again, I reiterate that the majority of regulatory technologies are about process improvement and so on. Best example I can give is I work with startups. I tend to help them find law firms who have, like LawPath and a number of others who have systems that enable them to see simple documents. But it's almost inevitable that they'll get, 2 minutes into looking at a shareholders agreement and realize that it's just way too complex to use a base document, and they need to then subscribe to buy some hours from that law firm to help them. So I just think that'll be the way. And if anything, it'll probably attract them to make more use of legal hours.
I would agree with
what, did you have? Sorry, yes, Mark, did you want to comment?
I would agree with what Tim said in terms of, the robots aren't here to replace the lawyers, at least in my view. As a lawyer, I'm probably biased in saying that. But I think, when we think of technologies that, and this is true at Theta Lake, and I think with other RegTechs is, making the kind of lawyering process more efficient and effective is key, right? There are so many aspects of law that can be improved, whether it's by simple process-driven technologies like you're talking about, Tim, or more advanced decision making or decision influencing things that kind of that leave the human at the center of what they do. I think the lawyers will kind of remain around, and to also tie that back to some of the kind of machine readable regulation and emergence of that stuff that was in one of the prior questions there too, right? the text of a rule often is not transparent. The implementation of a rule at an organization is going to differ from organization to organization. So lawyers are absolutely essential there, whether internal or external, to interpret what those rules mean in a particular scenario and to really operationalize them. So I think lawyers will be core to that going forward.
Jackson, did you have anything that you'd like to add?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess I do very much agree with Mark and Tim's comments there. I mean, one of the issues is that, you know, when we look at the course of the last 150 years and the speed at which interactions increase, you know, 30 years ago, people used to type a letter on a typewriter and post it off. And now the situation is, you know, there are just an increasing number of interactions that occur every day. And those interactions are ultimately subject to dispute. Dispute is then arbitrated at law. Those laws may be written in standard legislation that we know today, or they may be machine readable in the future. They'll still lead to disputes. It's that the lawyers will need to accommodate the new skill set of understanding how to interpret rules as code. I think that's where I see things going, but you know, that's probably not particularly an interesting answer.
Thank you, Jackson. I can't see any other questions that have come through. If anyone has anything else that they would like to ask the panel now, if you could please send it through.
Just give it a minute or so.
I definitely will.
Otherwise, you're about to. I think that might be it. You know, if people have questions, they're always welcome to follow up with the panelists, connect via LinkedIn or their website, I imagine. So feel free to do so. I can't see any questions coming through. Bex, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
No, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar, and I hope you had an opportunity to learn more about RegTech and how it enables legal services. Once again, I just wanted to a huge thank you to my wonderful panel. You've all been fabulous and really, really interesting speakers. So thank you, Alan. I'll hand it back to you.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Beck. That was remarkably interesting and I think very useful indeed. Huge thank you to Complize and Hammond Taylor, to Adrian, Jackson, Mark, Tim, and Minister Dominiello, who had to leave a bit early to attend other obligations, and of course to yourself, Beck, to our audience as well. And well, we hope to see you at another webinar shortly. Goodbye.